I literally showed up with a pair of work boots. I walked in, they said, "When can you start?"
If your purpose is solely to make money, to bank as much as possible, that's probably not the ideal scenario.
If the lifestyle doesn't allow for things beyond work, like, how do you progress yourself on the side, right? That was by far the hardest thing I've ever done in my life. You're not going to be here tomorrow.
If you own a plane, yeah, you probably want to tell somebody about that.
You know somebody that can pull the right strings, you're gonna make it.
Blue collar tales.
Like and subscribe.
Good day, ladies and gentlemen. In today's episode, the guest is a good friend of mine, Dylan, that we worked together for quite a few years, pulling some good precious minerals out of the earth. And he decided to shed his blue collar for a cushy job of being a pilot. I just wanted to see and ask him some questions. How did he pull it off? Because it's pretty impressive, if you ask me. Maybe he'll have some tips and tricks along the way that we can pick up, and hopefully, it will inspire somebody to do bigger and better things. Let's go. Okay. Since I already know who you are and we've worked together for quite some time, tell everybody else a little bit about you. Just a quick recap on how in the hell did you end up working in Saskatchewan in the oil field with a guy from Latvia, and from all that, you are flying planes now.
Quick recap.
Yeah.
Um, and just so people know, we've done this interview a few times, so we're trying to push through.
Yeah, quite a few times.
I think this is the time. So I'm from Kenora, Ontario, originally, kind of in the northwestern Ontario portions. Few hours west of Thunder Bay, about 2 hours east of Winnipeg. And then after high school, uh, just some things kind of went sideways. I had the opportunity to maybe go down to school, and then that ended up falling through. But I had a couple friends that moved out here to work in the oil field, and they were making some pretty good money. So I thought, oh, what the hell? I'll give them a shout and see if I could come join them, because who doesn't want to make more money, right?
That's how they get you. Yeah.
That's how they get you. And so they had a little place in Estevan, and they had enough space for me to move in with them. And that's kind of what drew me out to Saskatchewan to start working oil rigs. I literally showed up with a pair of work boots. I walked in, they said, "When can you start?" And went to work. It's definitely a learning curve. Like, a lot of guys from Ontario, I've spoken with a few of them, and a lot of them they're kind of shell shocked by it as well. They're if they make it, honestly, I think the fail rates were like above 90%. I think most guys, nine out of 10 guys never made it more than like a week.
A week. Yeah.
And
I think in the first year that when I started, we went through on just the one rig, the crew of 5 people. We went through over 200 guys
yeah,
just in one year.
I remember my first year. Yeah, we went through damn near a roughneck a day.
Hmm.
Yeah, for a summer season. I remember this guy. He showed up, and I was kind of turning into a zombie, and I s- stopped kind of showing him stuff because I was getting yelled at and whatever too, which is, I guess, normal. But he looked at me and he's like, "Well, aren't you going to show me anything?" And I was like, "No, you're not going to be here tomorrow." I was just as defeated as him, but the poor guy was just the lowest on the totem pole by that point. So I was like, "Sorry, man. I see ya."
Oh, yeah.
It leads into the spark thing, right? Like, you could tell when somebody shows up and they just have that it factor, and it's like, "Oh, this guy."
Yeah. Well, you're asking questions?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and they make sense.
Mm.
So it's tough, man. Yeah, that was so hard. That was by far the hardest thing I've ever done in my life. Was that like bar none?
Mm. Yeah, like there is a hard work, and then there is working in the oil field hard, I guess.
Yeah,
Uh, not say that you're not getting used to it. Like, definitely gets easier as you go, but
yeah, takes time.
like with everything else. But when
Yeah,
you came in on onto the rigs, did you already know that you want to fly planes? Like you had that thing that, oh yeah, I want to do that for a living.
yeah, I for sure did, man. Um, so when I was a kid, uh, my mom, I think my brother and myself, we used to travel out to Fort St. John, Grand Prairie area, because my family lived there on my mom's side. So we would always fly there. And in doing so, I mean, I was on an airplane at least, I want to say maybe twice a year ish, and absolutely loved it. They call it being bitten by like the bug. This is
Mm.
kind of the term they use in aviation. If you get bit by the bug, you'll forever be looking up. And I think it's 100% true. And that's where most people's passion in aviation comes from is they go on a plane and that's it. It's game over. And so I've always wanted to do it ever since I was knee high to a duck, if you will. Um, they it, everything. It was like the atmosphere of the airports, the smell, the excitement, the you know sitting on the plane, the mystery of how everything works. It just was so exciting to me. So I've always wanted to do it. They even let me go up to the cockpit once when I was a kid and look out, and yeah, sold,
Mm-hmm.
sold. So I always wanted to do it, and kind of circling back to the high school thing, I did have the opportunity to do it. Um, then by opportunity, I should say that loosely, because it is a very expensive thing to get into, and when you're young and you don't have like credit history or a proper score built up or any of that stuff built up for yourself, you rely on co-signers. So it just wasn't going to work out at the time because of like where my family's position was to be able to help me kind of get into it. And honestly, it's a good thing that happened the way it did, uh, because I think going through the rigs and kind of going through that path taught me a lot in life and gave me a lot of life experience that has made flying now. Firstly, I appreciate everything about it.
Yeah, for sure.
I appreciate everything. And it's given me a lot more respect for what I have accomplished for myself as well. Like I know where I've come from. um, Maybe a higher level of appreciation. So I definitely learned a lot by not pursuing aviation right out of high school. So yeah, I wanted to be a pilot ever since I was a kid. Coming to the rigs was, obviously I still wanted to do it, but kind of like we were just discussing there too, it's so hard. It almost alleviates all of your focus away from hopes and dreams to
Well,
just surviving.
yeah, it's that lifestyle that you're living, you know.
You have no time for anything, man. You really don't. Like, I remember trying to get a dentist appointment booked, and it like,
Yeah.
no,
Especially in a smaller town like Estevan, where everything is closed, like by the time you get from work.
right? Same
Hmm.
with doctor's appointments. As you know, the only way you'd see a doctor is if you were like brought in by the rig crew because you got
Yeah.
messed up at work.
My hand is dangling. I don't.
Yeah, yeah, just walk it off.
Yeah. Put a band-aid
Yeah,
on it.
yeah. Terrible, man. Yeah, but it made I don't know, it was hard. Like, it made pursuing aviation impossible at the time
Hmm.
because there was flight school or, like, training opportunities in Estevan. There was, I think, 2, flight instructors there, but and I did fly once with the guy, but, oh, man, yeah, like, work took precedence. Um, and it wasn't even because I wanted it to take precedence, it was just the fact that it's not a job, it was a lifestyle. If the lifestyle doesn't allow for things beyond work, like, how do you progress yourself on the side, right? I was able to study at night after work, and then every second weekend, I found myself down at the, flying club in Regina, uh, squeezing in a couple hours of flying here and there to kinda slowly start progressing it. So that's kinda why the whole, like, 12-hour days being cut down to 10-hour days was amazing because that gave me, in a weird way, 2 more hours in the evenings to try to retain as much information as possible from the courses and stuff.
Right.
Um, and then obviously eventually we got on like a 4 and 3, so 4 days on, 3 days off, and then that was kind of like we're switching back and forth between 11 and 3s and 4 and 3s, but
4 and 3 is gravy, right? It was just, I mean, it didn't feel like work at all.
yeah, yeah, it's amazing. It was seriously, that was amazing. That was the best schedule. That still is the best schedule I've ever had, actually.
Like for people who actually want to do something outside of just work, uh, like if you want to, if your purpose is solely to make money, to bank as much as possible, that's probably not the ideal scenario. But if you have any plans and actually trying to do something, to get somewhere else, then definitely, yeah.
Yeah. 4 and 3s was a nice balance, I think. You still made some good money, but you had time to do things with your life, hang out with friends, I don't know, pursue some hobbies on the side. In my case, like study and fly as hard as I could so I can, you know, get off the rigs at that time.
Say you knew everything that you know now. Uh, you have a schedule where you can dedicate, say, 1 day, even a week, for getting an hour worth of flight time. How much time do you think it could take?
I'd say if you're chipping away at it, you're trying to fly maybe once. If you're lucky, if you could do like twice a week and kind of study in the evenings. Yeah, you'd be looking at probably between 8 months and a year to kind of get a private pilot's license. I'd have to run the math, but it'd probably be something like that. Because
Mm,
obviously, in the end, too, if you're a private pilot, you're going to be constrained by whether you can't fly on on your own yet.
mm,
At least for a majority of the flight training, you're bound by a flight instructor. And technically, you are through all of your training up until your private pilot's license completion. But there's something in the middle of a private pilot's license. It's called a P star. And then once you've met some of the requirements, you have your P star, your medical, and you've done essentially like a checkout flight as well as some ground stuff. They'll let you fly solo. And in fact, you have to fly solo. It's part of the curriculum to get your private pilot's license. But at that point, then they're a little bit more lenient on like you flying on your own to kind of build some time up and stuff. But again, you're still very constrained by where you can fly, what you're supposed to be doing during that flight, things like that. So it's funny enough, I think your private pilot's license is a little slower. And then once you start working on your commercial pilot's license, once you're done your private pilot's license, it almost seems quicker because now you are your own constraint for the most part, other than a small portion of which you still have to do training with a flight instructor. um, so for anybody that's looking to become a private pilot, I think the biggest thing you have to do, firstly, is accept that it's going to take some time, and there are some steps along the way that you have to complete. So I would say if you want to get into it, the first thing you should do, and I've seen a lot of people skip this stuff and kind of shoot themselves in the foot. You should probably go down and firstly find out if there's a flight school nearby or a club or somebody with their uh their instructor rating so that they can teach you and train
Mm-hmm.
you. Because a lot of people don't have access to flight training, and that's obviously a massive damper on that. So
Right.
I would always say go down to your local airport, start talking to people. There's a hangar open. Trust me, people in aviation love to talk and have conversations. There's almost there's almost a level of pride involved. Usually if there's a hangar door open, there's usually a plane inside, and usually somebody owns that plane, and they love to talk about things that surround that aircraft. So trust me when I say walk into a random hangar and you're probably going to be welcomed as long as you know how to talk about their stuff.
Well,
And
it's
then you
like
can get information.
right, like with anything else, people are always interested in talking about themselves. If you own a plane, yeah, you probably want to tell somebody about that plane.
Yeah, right?
What you're saying is you can just kind of randomly go in there, start the conversation. And is that true that you can book like a time to fly, even if you like have no idea on how to fly? They can just put you in a pilot, like right beside the pilot in the cockpit, and you can test it out, kind of thing.
Yeah, so that's actually kind of where you're trying to go with this when you go in to talk to people. You want to try to find someone or a club or a school that can offer something called a discovery flight. And these discovery flights are important because that'll kind of allow for you to decide whether or not you actually want to pursue this. Um, some people think they want to do it and they get in the plane and they fly around, whatever, and they find out that it's not for them. But what you do in this discovery flight, often they'll firstly ask you, oh, or is this just you just want to go up and go sightseeing, or do you have an interest in flying? And if you have an interest in flying, definitely tell them because they'll often change how this discovery flight goes.
They'll try
And
to sell you harder
yeah,
on their
it's a
flight school.
sales it's a sales pitch for sure, man. Yeah. They'll let you kind of operate the plane, play with the controls, they'll explain a little more, and they'll put you in the left seat. Usually they'll put you in the left seat with like an instructor in the right seat, and they'll take you up and go for a spin around and let you listen on headphones and stuff like that. And they'll have chats with you and you can ask questions and you can see if you actually like it or not. Because again, like you don't really know. You look at it from afar, you're like, oh man, that's cool. I want to do that. Maybe you get in and it makes you super sick,
Mm.
or it scares you.
Or it's, like in my case, it feels pretty tight and crumpled. Like I'm a bigger guy, right? And those planes are not very big
or
usually.
or you're 7 feet tall and 300 pounds, and yeah, probably
Mm.
a, an absolute Viking designed for something else. I don't know. I mean, you can still probably work around that, but um, I suppose that's a limitation, maybe to an extent. But there's a lot of reasons why you should do it. but in the end, if you can do it and you tell yourself, man, that was fun, like this is awesome, I think this is something I'd want to pursue. I always tell people the second thing you should do is go get a medical. Get
Hmm.
a medical right away. Go there's a couple different tiers of medicals. Um, for the private pilot's license, it's the class 3 medical that you need. If I'm not mistaken, it's class 3 medical. But if you want to pursue commercial, you have to get a class 1 medical. And honestly, even for private pilot license holders or people that want to pursue that, I always say just get your class 1 because if you change your mind down the road, you might as well know that you could pass a class 1 medical. $100 maybe plus minus. Depends, I think, if it's recurrency. Sometimes they'll ask you to go do some other things and it costs a little more. Um, it is similar in the States. I don't quite remember if it's a class 1, class 3. Like, I don't know how their medical classifications work, to be completely honest with you, but it is similar. You do need to
Hmm.
have a medical. So if you're in the States, get a commercial medical.
Well, the
And
biggest constraint not passing the medical would be what your eyes probably, right?
there's a
Your
few.
vision.
Sadly, I know a couple guys that have been like prevented access because of color blindness, and it sucks because some guys don't realize like how colorblind they are,
Hmm.
or and it kind of comes down to the concept where it's like, how do you teach a someone who has never heard certain sounds what those sounds sound like? How do you, if somebody's never seen yellow, how do you explain what yellow is? Like, it just doesn't work, right? So it's like some guys that have a really hard time with like shades, because the eye test that they do is mainly based around shades. They'll put like little numbers in like these little circular things where it's just bubbles, and the
Right,
number is just a slightly different shade from the rest
right,
of the
right,
bubbles. And if you can't see slight shades, it's game over. And that right there, that is like you lose it. I don't remember if you could get a private like that. I don't think you can, but I do know some people that failed that and it
right.
was game over.
But
And it was horrible.
if you do have just regular glasses, if your vision is not perfect, that's not like a big deal.
No. They say again, and I can't speak on behalf of the American side of things, but in Canada, as long as your vision is corrected to 2020, uh, either by wearing glasses or wearing contacts, then you're okay. And then obviously you can't be colorblind. And I'm not totally sure on other eye issues, but that's something that you could talk about with like your optometrist and obviously an aviation examiner. I do know that there are things changing in the industry, and the tolerances are becoming a little bit looser because they're starting to realize that there are what's the word for it? You know, there are things people can do now that you couldn't years ago to solve or correct some of these issues.
Hmm.
So, which is good. It's allowing for more people to, pass these medicals, but again,
Hmm.
it's important. You got to do this medical. You want to make sure you pass, because I do know of a person or two that has started flight training, got up to going solo, and the school going, oh, you need to get your medical, and then they go get their medical and find out they can't actually continue, and they've spent already at that time like 5 grand.
Yeah, that'd be a bummer.
That's a big bummer. And in fact, the reason why I say class 1 medical is because some people have made it all the way up to the commercial, pretty much the commercial check ride. And for the commercial check ride, you have to have a class 1 medical or commercial medical, and they fail it.
Hmm.
And that's at that time, that's almost 60 plus $1,000. So step one, go do a discovery flight, and step two, get your medical. Do it. Plus, Transport Canada is slow.
Right.
They're 2 3 months till you get results. So it's just get it done as soon as possible.
Seems like everything is slow, not just the transfer to Canada.
You're
Not
right.
not trying to turn that into a political conversation, but hmm, getting a passport is a half a half a year kind of
That's a
wait
nightmare.
sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not good.
Okay, so we passed the medical, and we're in the flight school. Started flying.
Yep. we
How many hours of flight time do you need to get your private pilot's license?
I believe the minimum's 45 hours, but
45 hours flying with instructor, or that's including solo flights.
that's including solo, it's the whole
Hmm.
shebang. Now, it is a very
As of now, that's
yeah,
2020,
yeah.
end of 2024.
Yeah, yeah. And honestly, I don't know if that'll change because honestly, the average I think is 65 hours.
Hmm.
Um I and you know what? I passed mine at I think 76 or 77 hours. And obviously there's a lot of factors behind
Yeah.
that. Like I'm not much of a bookworm. I've always been like a hands-on guy, but um for me it was obviously working a lot and flying very little. So to maintain, a level of proficiency someone who's say in a program full time would have, it's going to take the full timer a lot less time in an aircraft to become proficient versus someone who's flying a lot less frequently.
Hmm.
So the average is I think around 65. I think of some people that were like mid 50s, high 50s. And obviously there's some people there that are above 75, 80 hours, um, but never 45. And you know what? If anybody's watching this and has been like, well, someone's like in the comments section, whatever, this old guy told me he did it in 45. So if anybody ever tells you, you know, well, it took Joe Blow 45 hours, just disregard, honestly.
Yeah, well,
There's a saying,
it could be true, right? Like he could have gotten it in 45 if he's like
could be. The
born to
likeliness,
be wild.
yeah, born to fly. The likeliness is low. I've seen a couple guys say that, and they were older individuals. I online, typical keyboard warriors, but just remember the complexity of aviation has gone up dramatically. There's like advanced avionics systems, complex airspaces. Like it's not just getting in a plane on at somebody's buddy's dirt runway, flying around in
Hmm.
circles for a couple hours, and the guy going, "Yeah, you're good." Like the syllabus has gotten a lot more complex. The things you have to cover are a lot more complicated. Um,
Thank God that it's getting a little more complicated, I guess.
well, it's good and bad.
Yeah.
Uh,
Well, for safety reasons, right? Not for they're taking the fun part out of it, like out of
yeah.
everything. But uh, planes, especially recently with all the shit that's going on and all the
Oh
planes
man,
crashing down, it
I don't
seems
know what's
like
going on.
you don't want to bypass the safety stuff.
Training, uh, yeah. That could be a whole podcast in itself. Everything that's been happening, but uh, yeah. Honestly, okay. So here's a buddy of mine gave me a saying. I used to train a little bit of combat sports, and one of the heads of one of the schools here in Regina said something to me, and honestly, I don't think I'll ever forget it. He told me to not focus on other people's success and or where they're at with things because everybody's skill levels are going to be different. Your ability to learn is different. Your schedule's different. Just because somebody joined after you and excels beyond where you think you're at doesn't mean that should freak you out. Focus on yourself. Um, Everybody's journey in life is very different. Everybody's in very different places in life. Say you want to become a pilot, you want to pursue that. Honestly, if you want to do anything, create a plan, create your own pacing that works for you, that's not going to burn you out or screw things up for yourself, and stick to that plan. And if you see people kind of bypassing you or whatever, just put horse blinders up. Be happy for them, but just
Mm,
focus on yourself, and remember who won the race between the tortoise and the hare, right? Like, just go through with it, because there were guys that joined that start flying after me, and they're just blew right by me, right?
mm,
And did that suck to see? Oh yeah, absolutely. It was like, oh man, like this guy joined like a month or two after and ripped through the training program and was like gone, right? And watching that's like, oh, like, I'm not even done my private pilot's license. This guy's already almost done his commercial. It's okay. It's all right. Just focus on yourself.
don't compare yourself to others. Compare
Nope.
yourself to yourself.
Yep. Just focus on yourself, man. Keep your head down. Do your thing. One of the big things you have to do, and this is for every level of aviation, is you have to do ground school. And all it is basically a program that tests your knowledge. You have to build upon knowledge. You have to learn about airplanes. You have to learn about aviation. There's a lot of things involved. There's, airspace, there's meteorology, there's systems, there's navigation, just all these things that you have to learn. It's a whole new thing. So some schools will offer you a ground school program. If you're a guy like you want to talk to people, you want to be in like a controlled classroom, whatever, and have discussions and stuff, it's awesome. And honestly, I kind of wish I had that opportunity, but a lot of us don't, because these schools will say, well, we have this thing on Tuesdays and Thursdays. It's at 7 p.m. Well, on Tuesdays and Thursdays, I'm working oil rigs till 8 p.m. I don't
Mm,
know. It's not gonna work. It doesn't work. A lot of people are in that situation. So, Canada, and I know they have this in the States, and again, I can't speak on behalf of them, but there are programs in the States where you can do this online. You can go online and use an online ground school program, and you can, go with it at your own pace. You can work away at it at your own pace, which worked for me. I was able to study at night. I was able to do longer sessions on the weekends and stuff, like when we weren't working, and work away at this thing at my own pace. And that's great. At the end of finishing your ground school and meeting the requirements, you have to write an exam. So that's one of the three things. You have to write an exam. You write this exam and you pass. It's a Transport Canada exam. Obviously, again, in the States, I think there's your FAA exams. In Canada, it's a Transport Canada private pilot's license exam. You also have to meet the hour requirements. And when you meet the hour requirements, you have to do a check ride. And then the check ride's broken down into two sections. And this is where the number two and number three things happen. You have to pass an oral examination where your examiner is going to test you on your knowledge of the aircraft, navigation, meteorology. He's going to test your knowledge, and then you have to go do a practical exam where you actually go into the aircraft and you actually have to do a multitude of things to meet the requirements to show that you're proficient and safe at flying an aircraft. You pass the check ride, great. Now you've got all three things. So again, you have to do a practical test, a check ride, um, or flight exam, whatever you want to call it. You have to do an oral examination. These two are together. They're usually done at the same time. It's usually 2 hours and 2 hours, so 4 hours. And you have to pass your written exam, Transport Canada exam. And with those three things all combined, that's what's going to give you your pilot's license. So again, if you want to do the ground school to try to get, you know, to get that exam written, you could do it online and do it at your own pace. And it is actually pretty cheap. Like, it's not crazy expensive. I think $500 or six or whatever, $100. You'll get your books and stuff. And and do it like that, and
Yeah,
it works. It
just
works,
the
man.
ground school is cheap. Then what racks up the bill is the
Is the
amount of hours you fly, and you
Yeah.
pay the instructor and renting the plane, right?
That's right. Yeah, the cost of renting and the cost of your flight instructor
Hmm.
are the things that really add up and make it very expensive. And again, like chip at it at your own pace. Like
Yeah.
maybe you can only get part of the money from the bank, whatever. Just try to chip away at it slowly and just slowly get her done. It's
Or save up your money.
And do it all at once. You know,
Hmm.
whatever floats your boat. There's many different ways of doing it. Um, And then, yeah, it's the same thing for the commercial license. And once you do a few of these things, you start to notice everything's the same in aviation. There's always like a ground portion, an oral portion, and some form of practical portion. Like absolutely everything. You're in rats. You want to be an IFR pilot. Awesome. Write the exam, do the oral portion, do this check ride. Want to be a commercial pilot? Write the exam, do the oral stuff, fly the plane, pass the ride.
Right.
What? Yeah, multi-engine. I don't think there was an exam, but there is an oral portion. Check ride. Type ratings. Ground school. Oral portion. Check ride. So everything. And
Check, check.
a lot of people. It's like, oh, it's so complicated. That's ground portion, oral, check ride.
I was gonna ask you the flight simulators and stuff because I remember last time when we were at your place and I took my little guy with me.
Yeah.
You had a pretty sweet setup there. Does the flight simulator, because they're getting pretty realistic nowadays,
Insane.
does that actually help you, propel the education towards getting your license?
Oh man. uh, it definitely doesn't not help. Like it definitely doesn't not help you. It depends on like how you use it. I know y- I hopped in and I was playing around in this and it gave me the ideologies and whatever. And obviously it was not designed to give me any level of proficiency. But one thing that it does help with, I would say, like if a guy can get his hands on a simulator or set something up for his or herself, obviously it's an awesome tool to have because if you plan on pursuing um, aviation professionally, you have to receive something called an IFR license, which is an instrument flight rules license, and you do require that. Um, I guess it depends on which route you want to take, but if you're planning on like airlines, like 703, 4, whatever,
Hmm.
like anything that's like high performance, high altitude, pressurized, yada yada yada, you need this IFR license. And having the simulator was pretty nice because it allowed for me to like just play around with the instruments, setting up approaches, practicing holds, seeing how holds look. Because a lot of these things, it's funny, you get this private pilot's license and you're like, oh, yeah, I'm a pilot. But then as soon as you like, even your commercial, you finish up your commercial, you're like, oh, yeah, I'm a commercial pilot. But then as soon as you introduce this IFR rating or this IFR license into your licensing group, the rules just completely change, and it's like a completely different language, you know, with completely different expectations. It really is a whole different world within a world, and to create and understand and ironically, the IFR license is like one of the smallest licenses, the hardest exam, I think, but it's like one of the smallest licenses, and yet it's like the key to the door that opens you up to one of the most complicated worlds. So yeah, having a simulator definitely helps you get into it and definitely helps create a higher level of understanding. It might even help you with some situational awareness, which is very important. There is apps or programs that coincide with these simulators. What is it called? There's It's funny because I'm a part of this thing and I haven't used it in so long. I'm looking at the apps. That's gonna bug me. There is a program that does coincide where it'll actually hook into your simulator
Hmm.
and connect you with other pilots and air traffic controllers.
We can
So
put
it's
it probably in the description there if you'll send me the link
if
after,
yeah,
if you'll
if I
remember.
remember it, I'll yeah, I should. It's terrible. I honestly haven't used it in like over a year, but it's really cool because it gets you connected with other pilots, other air traffic controllers, and there's a bit of a training syllabus built into this thing, and they treat it very professionally. And I know some guys that were using this thing a lot, and it really helped them with their radio skills because they were talking to actual air traffic controllers, like within this program. So you're using a simulator like Flight Simulator 2020 or 24 or whatever, and while you're doing it, you actually have to call and get clearances
Hmm.
and fly the routings. And if other people, real world people, are flying into the same airport and things get congested, these controllers are going to vector you out. They're going to give you holds. And so in a weird way, it's another concrete method to increase your proficiency with radio work, your IFR understanding and knowledge, and creating like a bit of you know, a higher level of skill with like situational awareness and stuff. But when it comes to handling the planes, uh, that it won't help you with
Hmm.
that really.
Right. Because,
It's very different. Yeah, you'd have to go to like a class Delta simulator or something like that because they do use simulators for training, and you can get type ratings through simulators, but they're
hmm.
massive, professional, hydraulically driven simulators that have gone through all the ropes of making it feel as real as humanly possible. Um, I haven't been in one yet, but everybody that's been through them say takes your brain for a spin because it just pulls you out of reality, puts you into the simulator, and the simulator is so realistic it becomes reality.
Right.
And I had a buddy like walk in to a simulator, or whatever, and the way he did it, he like looked over and he was like in this really really bad bank, but he was like standing there, and he's like, it tripped me out because the guy shouldn't just be standing there, but he is, you know?
Yeah. The whole virtual reality thing is getting pretty absurd how realistic it gets. Like even the VR glasses, all the games
Oh,
or anything.
it's
Mm.
incredible, man. The aviation industry is really taking advantage of those advancements in simulator technology. Uh, for example, okay, so honestly, in a simulator, because it's virtual and it's not harmful, they will make you go through things that you can't do in real life.
No one said you were going to lose both engines at a lower altitude than any jet in history.
Landing
Training.
plane on the water.
Sure. Yeah, you can train that.
Yeah.
You can train water ditching procedures. You can train belly landings. You can train V1 cuts. You can train actual like have actual like fires. You can like put smoke in the cockpit. You can do like crazy avionics failures and stuff that you can only do in a simulator.
Hmm.
And that and because of how real it feels, it, not only like it's a safe environment, but it still will put stress on you and make you have to solve these issues
But be cool. Just make a left turn for LaGuardia like you're going back to pick up the milk.
with a teammate under all of this stress. It does add a massive level of safety um, to the industry. I read a book called Fly the Wing, and one of the guy that wrote the book, I forget his name, but the guy that kind of wrote the book in association with some other folks that were part of like everything he's done, I suppose. He was an old school guy. They used to do all their training on wing, and there were tons of things. Like this guy has done so much. He's done it all. He's practiced like train on like mock stalls and geez, man, I don't know, you name it, he's probably done it. And one of the things he said in this book was how incredible the simulators have become and how he would way rather train in a simulator versus on wing. And like on wing's great. I train on wing on the King Air. Um, so it's cool. You're training, you're doing the real thing again, but you can't do some things. And especially in larger jets or larger aircraft, there's a lot of things you can't do in real life. Plus, it's very expensive. So you could take all the time you want in a simulator, but you fly. Imagine getting a type rating on a 747 or something. Like, oh, let's
That
try that again.
movie with Denzel Washington, I don't remember what's that movie called.
Flight.
Yeah, probably that's what it
Yeah.
is. I think they flipped the plane in that movie like upside down.
They inverted it.
Is that even real to do on a big plane like this?
Uh, yeah, no. You probably don't want to do that. Like,
Like theoretically, probably possible, but in practice,
I'd have to get up to that point. I don't
yeah.
know. I mean, like the thing is, planes that do like aerial maneuvers and things, or that are like acrobatically rated, their wings are designed in a specific way to provide, typically, from my understanding, a fairly equal level of lift, no matter which, if they're inverted or
Hmm.
in normal state of flight, where pretty much every other aircraft have wings designed around producing lift being in a normal state.
Great.
So being upside down is very, very contradictive to that and can cause some major issues. Obviously, like structural stresses, G loads that are like beyond
All
normal.
those hardcore pilots out there, please shoot us a comment. Tell us if you've done it before.
Dude, it's cool. There are yeah, there's a few channels on YouTube of guys that go through the training
Mm,
on getting like their acrobatic ratings and things like that. And it's pretty interesting to watch. Like anything, once it gets like dissected, and like the mystery of it's kind of like unveiled. You're like, oh man, that's really like it's still crazy, but you're like, oh really? Like that's how they do it?
yeah. Well,
It's like,
I
oh
I guess if a guy wants to go fly commercial airplanes, or the guy who wants to do acrobatics, you have to completely, go a separate route. Like you wouldn't be doing the same things
no.
as if you know you're just flying airplanes for a living or flying crop dusters or something like that. It's
Yeah, crop duster pilots are a different breed.
yeah,
They're we
cowboys
actually
of the aviation.
we yeah, I work I work with a couple guys. Our company's got a spray division, so they're cowboys. They're they're awesome pilots, man. They're such good pilots, honestly.
And
Really good hands and feet.
what are you flying right now? Just King Airs, or you
Yeah.
guys have something else too?
Yeah, no, I fly the King Air. For all the aviation nerds, I fly the King Air B200 or 250, and I fly the King Air B 350. And for the super nerds, we have the Dash 42s on the 200 and the Dash 67 Blackhawks on our 350. And they're honestly, yeah, they're really cool machines. They're 8 or 9 seaters
Mm-hmm.
and good useful load, but we do use them for going north and getting into smaller strips and things like that. Um, they are
And
pressurized and they can fly at 35,000 feet.
great. And how many flight hours would you have to put in on that type of airplane before you can get on like WestJet or whatever other company?
that's that's a loaded that's a loaded question. There's because so the industry's been in like a really weird place right now. I had a conversation with a guy recently who reached out to me. He's like, how should I do this? How I want to become a commercial pilot, but I've heard a lot of different things. So again, this is 2024. We're just like literally it's New Year's Eve into 2025. Um, so things are changing. This might not be valid down the road,
Hmm.
but in the current state of things, the aviation industry, I believe, is kind of slowing down again. So on this particular aircraft, I think you need to still put in some time, or at the very least, you should. But I know recently, within the last year, 2 years ago, there was a major, major draw. They were pulling people into the airlines that had barely any time, and then depending on if it was a flagship airline like a WestJet or an Air Canada, or I don't know what it was down in the States, to be honest, I can't speak on behalf of the American side. But up in Canada, the two main flagship carriers, it's your Air Canada and your WestJet. There are requirements, but as soon as you leave those airlines, a lot of the requirements aren't quite as stingent or stringent. But there were guys going like getting on like a 737 with like 200, 250 hours. Um, which is yeah, it's crazy. I know the airlines, it's 1,500 hours.
So you're saying if my uncle is flying those, he can get me on.
There's this common misconception, and I'd love to address it. It's not what you know, it's who you know, man. Like all day long, every industry,
It
every
doesn't matter
single
where, eh?
it doesn't matter. It's if you know somebody that can pull the right strings, you're gonna make it. You can have 5,000 hours, and then Joe Blow has 500 hours, but Joe Blow's dad owns the company. You're probably gonna get into that company over the dude with 5,000 hours. That's the reality. Like, is it fair? No, but if you understand the rules and understand the game, it's gonna take you a lot farther than just knowing things or having. Well, I had 100% in math, and Buddy's got like 60% in math, but yeah, his uncle, his uncle loves having a few beers with him here and there. Well, Buddy with the 60% grade is gonna do whatever. He's gonna get in, like you know what I mean. It's like an aviation is very much so like that. And to be honest, to circle back even farther, when I said go into hangars and start talking with people, that's huge. That's massive. That is absolutely massive. You like if you could go in, especially because a lot of people, especially in aviation, you don't know what they've been through. I walked into a hangar with a buddy of a colleague and I went into this guy's hangar down in Bullhead, Arizona.
Hmm.
And this guy, he has his own plane. So we're chatting. This guy so happens to be ex-military and also ex-corporate and has tens of thousands of hours flying like massive corporate jets. And he knows a lot of people, right?
Yeah.
And who knows, maybe he's a really good friend with like a part owner, right? And that goes for what happened with me. Like if we look beyond the private pilot's license thing, I carried on. I did as much networking as I could and talked to as many people as I could, and I tried to keep my name, as intact as possible. As whether you like it or not, you will have a name for yourself in the industry if you choose to progress forward. And so in doing so and trying to show my work ethic, I was able to create a bit of like a positive image, and people like that. And I was able to get this job because a guy I knew the owners of this company. And when I applied, the guy's brother so happened to work oil, saw on my resume that I worked oil, and I got in. And then I dropped Buddy's name in the interview, and he's like, "Oh, you know that? How do you know him?" And we ended up chatting, and
Hmm.
all of a sudden it was Buddy. And yeah,
Right.
I want you to come meet my chief pilot, man. We'd love to have you here,
Right. Yeah.
right? So yes, absolutely, man, absolutely. You don't like every single person you talk to. be generous, be kind, you know, be friendly. Dude, you really don't know who is going to be able to help you out.
Yeah. Well, it's like a general rule of thumb.
It
Be
is.
be nice to everybody else, and you don't have to make friends with everybody, but
No.
right, at
If you're
least.
a good dude, or and again, women too, same thing.
Mm.
You could be a good dude, good girl, whatever. And if people like you, you're gonna go places.
Do they have any programs that can propel you faster? Like, if you pay money, say a school that will teach a guy who doesn't have any experience. Because I've heard about those back in Europe. I was watching some interviews. I think in Russia, a guy was saying that we'll get you from zero to commercial license flying, airplanes in such time, and it will cost you this much.
Yeah, zero to hero.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, there's definitely programs in place. So, how can I encapsulate this? I know we did this yesterday, and I thought I did a well at explaining it yesterday. I'll try to re-explain this.
Hmm.
So, Europe does have programs,
Yeah.
um, and they have very good programs. However, Europe is not very general aviation friendly. At least from what I've been told by a couple buddies from Europe, general aviation there, at least compared to North America, general aviation in Europe is more dead. But it is there, obviously, like it's going to be everywhere. But in Europe, if you're going to be a pilot, you're most likely going to be a commercial pilot. So they've developed a lot of programs around that. So yeah, um, for example, in fact, I didn't mention this yesterday, but there is a company called EasyJet. Yeah, EasyJet out of Europe, and they will actually do exactly that. And there are many other companies do it too, but they'll actually take somebody that's interested in becoming a commercial pilot, take that person from that point, and literally train them all the way up till they're in a Airbus A321 and
Nice.
at 200 hours. Like it's incredible.
And it's just
Very
gonna
expensive.
cost you
It's gonna
$1
cost
million. dollars.
yeah, probably $150,000 or so. Canada has it too. Um, we're the last ones ish, or one of the last ones maybe to the table, because there are a lot of countries that do this. I know, like Qatar Airways does it. I think Emirates does it. I think JetBlue out of the states does it. I want to say American Airlines has a feeder program. And I mean, just look it up. There's tons. Canada was very delayed. There was a lot of talks of Canada starting something somewhere with some company. And I believe just recently, Air Canada's partnership program, or like partner company or sub company, however you want to look at it, is Jazz. They started up a feeder program for people that want to do that. So, but hey, you know what? And it depends on how you want to do things, right? Because you could go into this program if you want to go into it full time, and you have 120 or $130,000 to cough up, and it's great. You're gonna have a job flying whatever it is at the offer at the end of the program.
Hmm.
You're gonna probably be put on that machine. That's awesome. If that's what you want to do, that's great. There are some catch 22s with those programs, but with
You become their slave.
yeah, yeah, I mean, you're signing training bonds, maybe, unless you cough it up the costs yourself. I don't know, like, and I guess that depends on like what sort of subsidies you do get through these programs. I suppose that's something you'd have to kind of research for yourself. But for people like, the point of this podcast is for like blue collared folks, for example,
Hmm.
right? Um, the men and women of the working industry, of like the blue collar industry, your plumbers, electricians, um, rig hands, construction workers, carpet, whoever, right? Guys that work
Right.
a lot, men and women that work a lot that say want to do this transition. Well, a program like that might not work out, especially depending on where you're at in life. Do you have kids? What's your work hours like?
Yeah.
Um, the thing you want to do is you want to try to find like a flight school or a flying club. Again, somebody that's an instructor, whatever, and you want to be able to go into this place and be like, hey, here are my circumstances. Can we do something that can work around it? And that's what I did.
Yeah.
And they said, yeah, absolutely. Let's have a look at your schedule and we'll get you lined up with somebody that can train you like kind of around your schedule. And
Yeah.
and it works. And again, like if you're somebody that wants to go in and just hammer it all out,
Yeah.
maybe a feeder program works. A lot of flight schools offer syllabus
Like,
like a program.
to be fair, for a guy who's like 18, 19 years old, just out of high school, who went and got a job on the rigs, realistically, you're making like hundred
Mm,
plus $1,000 a year, like Canadian, I'm talking, right
yeah,
off the bat without any experience, right?
yeah,
Um, if you don't have any bills, if you can live with a roommate or in your mom's basement without paying for anything, you just bank all the money, like save 90% of that money without spending it, and in like 2 years, you can save up for anything that you really want. Like if you're
yeah.
really smart with it, which unfortunately not too many people are.
Keywords,
Yeah.
if you can.
Hmm.
'Cause it's hard, man. That's such a hard. You get those paychecks, you're like,
Hmm.
what could I spend this on? It's
Yeah.
just insane.
Everybody
But
wants to drive a fancy car.
yeah, that was one of them. Yeah, like yeah, you know how it goes. But it's true. If you bank money, you can go and throw like even half of it, right? Like even
Hmm.
half. And I always say like if you want to go and get money from the government or the bank, if you can walk in there with a private pilot's license already, which is like 15, 16,000 ish, like plus minus a little bit,
Yeah.
you know, they'll look at you in a different light than someone that walks in there and goes, well, I think I want to do this. They'd be like,
Hmm.
well, have you done it? Have you started? Like, how do we know that you're gonna be successful? Like, so little things like that kind of help in that circumstance. But I'd say that's something that you can kind of do on your own and do a little bit of research for yourself as well, like going into your local bank or looking at your provincial programs or subsidies and seeing what sort of things that they offer.
Because
Um,
some companies like WestJet or Air Canada, do they have any grants that they can give to people? Like, is it something that they do?
I'm not 100% sure on that. My I want to say no, but again, things have changed and things are changing. Like again, Jazz is doing this feeder program, and that's new.
Hmm.
I don't even know if they've even put people through it yet, or if they're doing it. I don't know if people have graduated from the program yet. Like it's 2024. If you're watching this a couple years down the road, things could be
Yeah.
completely different. Who
O-
knows? But
Or if you
right,
have any information about that, please share with us.
that'd be great.
That's why we're having these conversations because it's general information that we're trying to provide to everybody else.
Yeah, and that would
Uh,
be great. I would love to hear. I would love to get in contact with somebody from that program because I have had a lot of people reach out to me asking about stuff like that, and I've told them like
for
there's
sure.
nothing, but I've heard there's things happening. So yeah, I'd love to reach out or be reached out by someone in the program, and I'd love to get more information because I know a lot of people that would be interested in at least attempting to get involved with that. So
And if anybody does want to, you do have your YouTube channel,
yeah, I have a YouTube channel called Let's Talk Pilot, and
right?
it's kind of like a vlog-ish style
Mm-hmm.
thing. I do try to do some talking points and discuss some stuff, maybe more from like a commercial standpoint, but I do wanna focus that channel on covering kind of like your bases
Hmm.
in aviation, like, how to get involved, tips and tricks, you know, things that are not financial advice, but like just advice based around like the current structure of things and to help people out and obviously show the ins and outs of it. And um, right now it's based around flying the King Airs in a 703 under the 703 operations.
Why do people in states make so much money, so much more money than in Canada? Is it because the companies are bigger, or is it something else affects that?
Companies are set up to be more of like a banking organization. Now, what does that mean if we break it down a little bit from like the top perspective? Their companies aren't looking to make money off of your ticket, off of like the ticket you bought. So if you buy a ticket for $100, they're like, okay, yeah, the $100 might even be a bit of a lost profit, but generally, I think it's like a break even, and that's for like your lower end tickets, business class and first class. I believe is still designed to be a profit tier, but your economic or economy, sorry, your economy class tickets, I believe, are like break even. Now, obviously, the majority of the aircraft in most cases are economy seats. So and that leads you to think like, well, but how are these guys making money then? Well, it's because they've turned these airlines into something where there's actually a currency built into the company itself that people
The
buy into.
ecosystem, yeah.
Yeah, and it really is almost like a living, breathing ecosystem, I suppose, but for like money. So what they do is they use travel points, and they get themselves in bed with all of these banking organizations. They come out with credit card systems with built-in point systems. And what you end up doing is you buy into these because you get travel benefits and there's lots of products. And I don't know if you've ever noticed or if you've ever been to a big airport, but when you walk in, it's just products everywhere.
Hmm.
It's just things to buy at prices that are insane. And that's where a lot of these companies are actually making more money. They're making money off of the points that you're accumulating and spending, and all the products that you're buying on these planes and yada yada yada. So in turn, like, they're able to lower the prices of like tickets, at least base level tickets, and allow for people to travel for like dirt cheap down in the states, which in a weird way draws those people into buying more things at airports or at the airlines or whatever, because they can afford it. And that, I believe, also in turn generates a lot more profit for those companies as well, and obviously that in turn allows them to pay their pilots significantly more. I know the question you asked me the one day you reached out, you were like, "Is this thing true? This guy is talking about how this dude was making 700,000 a year American."
Yeah, like
And
I don't know if I'll be able to find that video again. Maybe I'll post it here too. That
yeah,
was crazy. It didn't
yeah.
seem real,
And that
but
guy's real too. That guy's
mm,
legit. I've been following his YouTube for a while,
hmm,
and he came back and said, "Yeah, in fact, I know some guys that have made over 1 million in 1 year, American, as a pilot." Obviously, that's a top tier guy.
yeah.
Um, but here in Canada, you're a top tier guy is, I want to say, between like 400,000 a year. Things are changing, but that's a significant, and that's Canadian, right?
The job shortage, like, are they short on pilots both here in Canada and across the border as well, the same way, or is it just in Canada hurting real bad?
Yeah, it was a worldwide phenomenon, to be honest. Absolutely everybody everywhere was short on pilots. And like I said, there was people with, very, very low hours going to some of these smaller companies flying 737s and whatever else. And there still is a shortage. Um, there still is a shortage in place, but things have slowed down a lot. A lot of seats are being filled kind of from the bottom up. Um, Again, that's kind of a complicated thing. but things are slowing down a little bit. However, again, if you play your cards right, you can still enter the industry, I would say, fairly safely and be successful at a, at a fairly decent rate. Still much better than what it was 10 years ago, where
Hmm.
it was like impossible to basically get your foot in the door. Like, it was insane. Um, yeah, but things have slowed down quite a bit, in terms of hiring. So, a lot of companies are looking for captains, and to be a captain at a lot of these major companies, you have to have an airline transportation pilot's license, and it does take a few years to meet the requirements and to write the exams for this license, before you're allowed to get into these airlines. So, and because a lot of people during the massive push, like the crazy, crazy pilot shortage, like at the pinnacle of it, a lot of people were just bypassing into these companies, um, without meeting all the requirements, at least for the captain upgrade. Um, Now they have a lot of like first officers and stuff, but a lot of them are not capable of upgrading to a captain role because they haven't met like those requirements to do that. So there's like, in a weird way, they almost shot them, like, I would say they shot themselves in the foot by, like, doing this, and they don't have enough training captains, they can't do, like, PICUS programs or MPIC programs, and, like, there's all these things that surround this crazy thing that's happening. So, yeah, I would say you're still okay, there's still a shortage, but if you are interested in the industry, um, definitely go through like your 703, 704 route if you're in Canada. I can't remember what the part, because I know there's like a part 121, whatever, down in the States. I don't remember what the equivalent is in the States, but go through, work some turbine jobs, fly some King Airs, fly some 1900s, ATRs, whatever, and get some good experience, get your ATPL license, make yourself look good, and you'll probably get into an airline of some form
Yeah.
because you'll be someone that they can look at and go, we can make this guy a captain. So you'll
And
bypass that.
right, by then you should have a pretty good idea also if you actually want to do that
And that's right.
for your job, like
Yeah.
for every day, because at the end of the day, it's gonna be your day in day out every single day. That's what you're gonna be up to.
Yeah,
Uh,
that's right. And yeah, you're right. Absolutely, man. Some people halfway through everything is like, you know what, I'm happy where I am at right now. And that's where they stay,
yeah.
and absolutely nothing is wrong with that whatsoever, you know.
Obviously, there's a lot more things that I would like to talk us about, but
Yeah, there's
hopefully it's not the last time, like I said.
Yeah. I guess if there was one more thing I could add that I talked about yesterday,
Yeah.
that I would say would be almost the cherry on top of the icing, just to kind of finish this off. Um, firstly, if you're in the industry and you know, y- you're comfortable, but there's things you want to uh, do it. Honestly, do it. Again, like, I failed at becoming a pilot numerous times. I don't honestly, whatever, 4 plus times attempts at doing it till
Hmm.
I was finally successful. And it wasn't check rides, it was just life things. It was actually just things in life that were very hard. Don't give up. And also, I know how addicting being comfortable is.
Oh,
Uh,
that's the
Man,
worst.
and I know Elvis, you and I, we've seen a lot of this where guys that, they're in their late 40s, 50s, 60s, they're making lots of money, and they always say the same thing. Oh man, yeah, I thought about doing that once, and I just never did it.
Mm.
And I know a lot of people outside of the industry too that were like, oh, for my example, I wanted to be a pilot, but I just could never do it. On the rare occasion, it's true, maybe you can't, but more often than not, it is you stopping yourself from pursuing something, and it doesn't have to be aviation. It is scary, you know, but you have to figure out a way to come over the fear of pursuing something. that will hopefully maybe bring you joy, like bring you some happiness, goal in mind that you've always wanted to do. You have
Right.
to just develop a plan and understand that it is scary, but you have to get over that fear, that initial jump, that leap of faith. You have to do it.
Yeah, obviously you will have to sacrifice things,
Yep.
including, your lifestyle.
It takes time. I sacrificed a huge amount of my wage to do this,
Yeah.
and
And it's just not about the money all the time.
no.
Whatever makes you happy and feel good. Unfortunately, sometimes it just doesn't come to realization that you know that's what you need. That's what you want.
Yeah, yeah. There's a lot of people that have, in our case, they quit rigs. They make a lot less, but they're a lot happier where they're at. And yeah, it goes to show that doing things that you actually enjoy really make the difference in your life. So,
Yeah. Not
um,
to say that you can be happy working a certain job. Like if
oh
you're happy
yeah,
where you're at, uh,
yeah, absolutely. Some
all power
people
to
are
you.
psychopaths and love rigs, and it's just like,
Yeah.
what,
And
really? But
um,
okay, all
they're good at it, right? But
each to their own.
I think something like flying planes definitely involves a little bit more dedication
Yeah,
than
it's a lifestyle, man. Yeah, it's not just a job. It's same as the rigs, It's not just a job. It's a lifestyle, and you have to be passionate about it if you want to do it. So,
yeah. No, that was awesome, man. Uh, thanks a lot.
yeah, no, thank you. Thanks for having me on the podcast. Hopefully, knock on wood, everything
Yeah, I
goes
will
good.
share your YouTube channel in the description. Uh, in the comments, please ask away if you have any questions to either myself or Dylan. And I actually want to make another episode maybe once with some other guys who did work on the rigs. If somebody will be interested in getting on uh, one of those for one reason or another, uh, probably mostly because of money. If somebody wants to get on the rigs, I think it still is a very good option to bank a little bit of a cushion for yourself, um, especially without requiring any previous experience or education. That's still a very good option. Yeah, I think. Um, but yeah, maybe we'll have another discussion about that sometime.
Absolutely, man. Yeah, I'd love to do another one of these days. It'd be fun.
Yeah, for sure. Well, happy 2025, and we'll see what the next year brings us.
Yeah, it's exciting. Thanks again for having me on, and yeah, happy New Year, and good luck
Yeah,
with
yeah. Good luck to everybody.